Welcome, 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 family. I'm Mrs. Lisa Chandler, and today you are watching the first video in a New Ways training portal. And we're going to talk today about home education and homeschooling. So before we get started, I want to kind of lay some foundational work and information I want to share with you. So we're parents, or we're going to soon be parents, maybe for some of you. But the moment your child is born, you understand that you are 100% responsible for that child. That child is going to go home with you from the hospital, or if you've had a home birth, you know that that child is now your complete concern. Everything related to that child is now your responsibility. What they eat, um, getting them on a schedule, what they're going to wear. They are completely at your mercy, which means that you have a great deal of responsibility. Something happens though as that child gets older and they become more independently able to care for themselves. And, or when we need some help in caring for them, like let's say you are a working parent. You're going to send your child to a daycare or to a family member's house, and all of a sudden, your 100% responsibility is going to start to drop. And it's going to drop more and more and more as that child gets older. When that child goes to public school, however, we're seeing dramatic drops in parent responsibility. We're seeing parents who are saying crazy things like, they're your problem when they're at school, and they're mine when they're at home, so don't bother me with what they're doing at school. There's something that's happening in our system that's leading parents to believe that they are no longer responsible for their children. And that comes from this idea that we as parents are not qualified to teach our children. We don't know what we're doing, and we're not capable of figuring it out. So what we're seeing is as our children are getting older, parent responsibility is dropping. So whereas you had 100% responsibility when that child was born, once they get older, some parents, it can drop down to 20%. And that is leaving our children completely unsupervised. Because believe it or not, that coach, that teacher, their friends, whoever it is that you are now believing is going to supervise them and raise them and train them because you're not doing it, they're not doing their jobs. They don't really care. So we're falling into situations where our children are just not being trained for life. They're not being taught. And the things that they're learning in the school system are not actually practically applicable to a successful life. It's not going to actually help them build a meaningful, significant, purposeful life. That's our job to help them do that. So we want for you to become a home educator. What is a home educator? A home educator is a person who maintains the responsibility for their child, even though they're getting the assistance of external sources to help educate the child. Even if your child is in a private or public school system, you can still be the home educator. I'll give you an example. So if any of you have read my book, A Leap of Faith, then you know that we moved here when I was about 6 years old. My parents were told that they could get a free education, a free college education. So they moved the whole family here to the States, and I began going through the public school system. I've been in the public school system a long time. I remember one day when I was in the third grade, I brought my work home, and my mother looked at it. It was a math test, and I had gotten pretty much everything wrong. My mother was very concerned because every day I came home, she would check my assignments because she didn't want the teachers to think that her children were stupid. She was actually going over the work with us at home and then returning it to the teacher. So she already knew that I had understood the math. And so when I got this test back and it was like a 40% on it or something, she kind of just looked at it and said, that's not right. Um, so she went over my test and discovered that all of the teachers' X marks that she said were wrong were actually correct. So my mother wrote a little note and sent me back with the note the next day. And I'll never forget Miss Jackson, my third grade teacher. She read the note and it was a very proper note because, we're from the British West Indies, so everything has to be done properly. And the teacher said to me, she went back and looked at my work and just started, doing the math in her head. And she apologized to me and said, she apologized because she used the wrong answer key to score my assignments. And she said to me, she was a black teacher. So she came to the side and she said to me, she leans in and she says, "You are very lucky to have the mother that you have because I would never have known that I used the wrong key. None of my other children, their parents would have even noticed." And that's really what it means to be a home educator. It means you notice what is going on with your child. You are not just giving complete and total blind faith to a system and saying, oh, they know what they're doing. They've got it under control. Clearly, they don't have it under control, and they really have never had it under control. This is not something that's new. I mean, I was in the third grade a long time ago, but I'm sure that those things are still happening today. I know it happened with our daughter, Amana. I found that her grades were not right and had to send it to a teacher. And that teacher, who happened to be a white teacher, just said, well, I have so many children's papers to grade. That's why I made the error. It wasn't even an apologetic, like, oh, my mistake. I'm capable of making mistakes and I'm sorry. It was more like, well, there's an excuse for why I did that. But, good thing you found it and I'll go ahead and fix it. This is what it means to be a home educator. It means that no matter what happens with your child, whether that's in school setting, uh, a sports setting after school, or when they are visiting with family members or friends, you need to know what's going on with them. You need to make sure that you are constantly talking to them and training them up. It doesn't mean they're not going to get exposed to things that you don't agree with. It just means that you're going to know when that exposure happens, and you're either going to, acknowledge and say, okay, yes, that is completely appropriate. We believe that that is our custom, or you're going to dismiss it and you're going to say, we don't do that. We don't believe that. That is not our custom. And it's okay to say those things to your children. Other people have their customs and their beliefs, and you are completely entitled to your own. My husband and I will sit and talk about the things that we believe. We did that before our children were born because we didn't want to be on the wrong page and get into a situation where I'm telling the children one thing and he's telling them another. And it doesn't mean we covered everything because there were plenty of times where we were not on the same page. But when those times arose, we would talk about it and get on the same page or come to some type of compromise. And in doing so, we would often do it in front of the children. Like we would teach them how to negotiate and how to, compromise with people. That's what we're doing as home educators. We are preparing our children to replace us. And that is a radical idea because most of the places that you go, people are thinking like, oh, I worked really hard to get here and I'm not giving it up for anybody. So they want to keep all the information very close. They don't want to share it. They don't want to give it out. I have seen parents, not just, black parents, white parents, parents who will not share their financial situation with their children, who will not share their voting preferences with their children. They're not telling their children anything about what it means to be, the leader of that family. And that's very dangerous because if something should happen to you, your children would be completely lost. They would have to start over with nothing. So everyone in the house really needs to be a recipient of your home education. And that doesn't just mean us moms. There are plenty of dads who are involved in the home education of our children, and that's a good thing. Balance is always a good thing. So as a home educator, we want to make sure we are thoughtful about the things that we are teaching our children, and we make sure that nothing slides past us. There's not going to be any faulty thought processes that get developed in our children because we have not made it clear what we believe. And I'm not the one to tell you what it is you should believe. That is a completely personal decision. But whatever you decide is your belief. I just want you to frame it as this is our custom. This is how our family does it. And that will free you from having to explain your decisions or justify them to anyone else. They're your customs, and you do it how you want to do it. Um, One of the symptoms of this systematic education, process that we have here in the United States is that parents start to doubt themselves and feel guilty that they're doing things wrong. They teach you that there is a right and a wrong. Now, it doesn't matter if their right this year turns out to be a different right next year, because, that changes. All that matters is we're wrong as parents. And so, one of the things we have to really combat, we really have to fight against it, is this thought process that we are not enough. No matter what your qualifications are, what your level of understanding is, if right now you have a family and you have children and you're running that house, clearly you're doing something right. You're watching this video right now, clearly you are doing something right. You're actually taking the time and the effort to looking into your child's education. You are okay. No matter what anybody tells you, you are just fine. And your children are going to be just fine because you've taken the steps to be a home educator and to, make sure that they're good, that they can replace you, and that you're not going to have to start off with nothing the way maybe you or I had to. They're going to start off in a different and better position because they're going to know all the things you did not know. And that's what home education does for us. You're keeping about 60% of your control. And if you want to keep even more control, honestly, you have to become a homeschooler. Homeschooling in the state of Georgia is freeing because Georgia is a homeschool friendly state. So there's a lot of things we can do here to prepare our children for life and to replace us that, a lot of people don't get. Not even as home educators, you won't get the benefits that homeschooling provides. But it does require a leap of faith because a lot of times we've been through the system of education and we've been taught that you don't leave the system. You just don't do it. You ruin your kids. But that's not true. We don't ruin them just because we homeschool them. And if you can homeschool them, then that means that you now not only get to decide what is appropriate or inappropriate for them to be learning. You don't just get to say, okay, well, that's going to happen, but this is our custom. Like, oh, you're just going to have to deal with that. You get to say, this is what we are going to learn. This is what we are going to test on. These are what your grades are going to mean. It's not just a school system making all of those decisions. You're making the decisions. You're deciding what graduation requirements are for your homeschool. You're deciding what kind of class your children will take and what your courses look like. If your child is interested in coding, there's no reason to have them do anything other than focus on coding. You can still give them English, language arts, math, science, social studies, all of those things while they focus on coding. If you're in the public school system, we know you have to go to a specialty school, a charter school, a STEM school, but in homeschool, you are it. You can have them go and shadow someone who's working in the coding field right now. You can do whatever you want. And all you have to do is document it. And we'll talk about that in a different video. But you are so free as a homeschooler to decide what it is you're going to do and how you're going to do it. Now, a lot of people will say, they can't homeschool for various reasons. And we've talked about that in our book, whether it's a financial reason, whether, they're just worried about socialization, whether they don't feel they're qualified to teach. Homeschooling in the state of Georgia, all you need is a high school diploma or GED. And if you don't personally have that, then you can compensate a tutor who has that to help you home instruct your children. They make it so easy that the only thing that really needs to happen is that we as an individual need to decide, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to take a blind leap because I just know that public school is not working, private school is not working, that system is not working. What my kids get exposed to is not working. I just need something different, and I'll figure it out as I go. And, I think that we forget that we are really intelligent people. Like, human beings are incredibly intelligent. If there's something that you needed to figure out right now, you could get on Google or YouTube, you'd figure it out. But when it comes to our children, we just kind of believe, like, no, the system knows best. And so those are one of the things we'll have to really fight against as homeschoolers. But homeschooling just means that you're responsible for your child. You're 80% responsible for your child. You're still, not going to be back at 100% because these are now, conscious little people who have their own ideas and thoughts. And we do want for them to start owning their own education. So even though we're keeping 80%, we want to kind of bring that number down, but only as our children increase their level of responsibility in the homeschool process. And that way, together, we can figure out what it is that this child was put in the earth to do. And that's the biggest thing. Homeschooling allows you to be purposeful in everything that you're doing. You're not doing it and then wondering, why did we even do that? I had that happen to me a lot of times when I was in the public school system. I had it, I was like, why are we doing it this way? I would know that, okay, this isn't working. But even as a teacher, even though I loved our kids, in my class, there are things that I had no power to change. And you're going to find that there are some really awesome teachers in the public school system, but they don't have any power to change things. They have to do exactly what the school board says, exactly how they say it. So for us, as homeschoolers, we are the school board. We are the principal. We're the chairman of the trustee committee or the board or whatever. We make those decisions. And in making those decisions, we're going to be focusing on what our child actually needs. Sometimes, though, even when we're homeschooling, we're going to need to be flexible, right? That's one of the benefits of homeschooling, because it doesn't have to be that we're going to homeschool from now until forever. It could be where we're homeschooling right now because that's what we need to do. And then maybe we're going to try a different program because, maybe the school's offering a program that is going to help benefit our child. So we'll try it, and then we might homeschool again later. And that's what happened to us. Our oldest son, Amari, we homeschooled him. We pulled him out of public school in the 7th grade because we realized it was a mess. And he was failing and was in danger of being retained a grade. And this is not our kid. Like, he's a smart kid. Not just saying that because I'm his mama. He's really a smart kid. So when we saw that, we pulled him out and said, we're homeschooling. I spent the next 3 years or 2.5 years kind of fixing everything the public school broke. And then we discovered that they had an aviation program. He wants to be a pilot, so we decided, okay, we'll put him in this aviation program. So for 2 years, we had him back in the public school system dealing with that environment just because we were promised he was going to get a sign off to be able to go and take his written aviation exam. Unfortunately, at the end of the 2 years, the instructor decided he did not want to risk losing his instructor's license if too many of the kids failed, so he did not give them the sign off. Yeah, you heard me right. 2 years in public school because we thought that they were going to fulfill their promises to us, and then at the end of the 2 years, they did not. I was upset because those 2 years we could have been putting him in a private pilot and program. We could have paid for it, and we just decided that if they were going to give it to us free, we were going to try to take it. Um, and as you, if you know, I refer to the book again because nothing is free in this system. It cost us 2 years delayed in his process and his goal, meeting his goal of becoming a pilot because we wanted to save a couple dollars. And just the exposure to the culture and the customs that were in the school system, it wasn't worth it. At the end of it, I mean, you can imagine how hot I was. I was hot. Okay. At the end of that time, I had to say, you know what? Learning lesson. Now we know. It's not going to happen again with our daughters. It's certainly not going to happen with my grandkids. We're done. Stick a fork in it. Done. Okay? We're done. And a lot of people aren't done yet. They're still going to tolerate what they deal with in the public fool system because they're still believing those promises. And, some of the promises might actually come true. But if 1 in 10 of the promises come true, you're still not in a good position. So for those of us who've decided that homeschooling, that's it. We're just gonna figure it out. We're gonna go as we go. We're gonna take the journey together. We're just gonna enjoy our lives and figure it out. That's what these videos are for. We're here to help you figure it out, kind of keep you from making some of the mistakes that I've had to make. That would be great. So that your homeschooling journey ends up being amazing because homeschooling really, really is amazing. And if it's not amazing, it's probably because you haven't detoxed or deschooled, right? And we'll talk about that in another video. So let me make sure I have covered everything that I wanted to cover before I let you guys go. Wow, I did a good job. I covered everything, I think. Awesome. So if you're a home educator right now because your child is in the public school system, hang in there. Don't feel bad because, well, actually, there's some times where I've talked to parents and they're like, man, I still have to basically teach my child when they come home from school. We'll spend 2 hours doing homework. Like, yeah, that's what it means to be a home educator. When you're working with the school system, it means that whatever they didn't get during school, you're going to have to teach it at home. So hang in there. Don't give up. That's exactly what it needs to look like. It needs to be that you, even after an exhausting day, have to sit down with your child and talk to them and listen to them. And then talk to the teacher or the assistant principal or the guidance counselor or whoever and make sure that your goals for your child are being met. The school system works for you, right? So it doesn't matter how many times you have to make the phone calls or send the emails, that's what you have to do because your child is in that system. So you're going to be a home educator and you're just going to say, well, that's just the way it is. And you're going to make sure that you're fighting for your child to get out of that system with the fewest amount of scars as possible. And if you're decided, you know what, there's got to be an easier way. We don't need to be doing homework for 4 hours a day after you've been in school for 6 hours. If you're not looking for babysitting, then you can become a homeschooler. And we're going to help you do that. So in our next video, we're going to talk about specifically how you go about becoming a homeschooler in Georgia. It takes 3 minutes, literally 3 minutes. And then you're off and running. So thank you so much for watching this video. And no matter what educational journey your child is on and your family is on, we hope that it's filled with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding.